on Friday, February 20th, 2026. And I call the Finance Committee for the Lewis Board of Public Works to order. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for showing up. It's a rainy day. Who is here from the committee is myself, Bob Heffernan, Robin Davis, Mike Hogan, Carolyn Jones, here door, but I don't see Calvin. Rena Brown Hicks is in a conflict meeting with the city's budget committee, and I'm not sure, Calvin is not here yet, but we do have a quorum. And Sharon Sexton and Kimberly Bellier and Chris Keller are here as observers.
Well,
She's a
yeah.
She
better be doing more than serving.
Kim's a member.
Yeah.
she's voting member of the committee.
Yep.
Yeah, she is.
Never mind.
Yes.
We still have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is the review of our minutes from January 23, 26. Any changes, comments, corrections?
The changes I had, I already gave to her. She corrected it and sent it up to you guys.
Okay,
So we have a corrected copy there.
Yeah.
so do we?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. The next item is review of the fiscal year 27 budget, etc.
Okay.
10 minutes for that piece, and we go to the next.
I'm hoping we're out of here, guys. So like Richard said, this meeting is for the review of the fiscal year 2027 budget, which runs from April 1st of 2026 through March 31st of 27. In your packet, you should have the updated table of contents that I gave this morning. That's just a run over from the model acceptance. Notes of my findings while I worked through the budget and the updated model. Some things I wanted to note for 2027, we have new customers coming from everywhere that is listed in the notes. I don't think I need to go through everything. For employees, I have a hire in the electric department for 2/3 of the year, water department for a full year, and admin for a half a year. I included the cost of service study and professional services for each utility. We plan on soliciting bids possibly the end of this month, beginning of next month. And that should be starting in April-ish for the cost of service.
When you say that the cost of study was included in the projection, do we know what that cost is, or it's estimated, or we're using the same project?
I actually used Dawn Lund's estimates as the template because we haven't had the bids from the other companies.
Okay, so we're getting more than just hers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Could have done a standard 3 bids.
Okay, any ETA on target? Is it a month from now or 2 months from now? Or
I
what?
want to do it within 2 weeks of soliciting the bids.
Okay,
And then to start in April for the cost of service and the projections.
and that'll be for the next 5 years, starting in 27? Or
Starting fiscal year 28.
28.
27 is already said.
Thank you.
So again, 27 is the last year of the previous cost of service study.
Other things that coming from my notes, There is a small increase to the industrial rate to bring them closer to residential and commercial rates. That is outside the approved rate track, so that will need approval from the board. The water adjustments for 27 were to reflect corrections from leaks that were in my notes for 26.
Right, read that.
For wastewater, we have a new flow agreement with Sussex County. This current fiscal year, we increased their rate by 81.2%. So this coming fiscal year, 2027, we are not doing an increase for them. And following that, it will be CPIU increase.
Which is from the contract?
Yes,
There is a CPI
CPIU, that's the
on
agreement.
that portion on the $5.31.
And then the capital expenditures went up exponentially from what was in there from last year. We have been deferring maintenance and now we're seeing the result of it, of having to do these projects fast and furious.
There's $12 million of capital in here.
There's much more than that, yes. I don't know the number exactly, but
I mean, that's a thing that jumped out at me is there's a huge increase in capital.
yes.
And a question for really Robin is, can we manage it? That's not today's meeting, but
A little bit of today's.
Well, the
meeting.
finance portion of it is very much today's meeting.
So with that, I would ask you to go to page 4. That is your cash flow summary 1. Lines 16 through 20 show your change in cash and equivalents for fiscal year 27, which is in the pink. So that's the one that we're reviewing. As you can see, everything is in the positive except for stormwater. And that will bring me to my next point of the ending cash balances, 21 through 25. As you see, as you go further into the years, wastewater and stormwater are going into negative territory. So my suggestion here would be to increase stormwater for this coming fiscal year, to ask the board for an increase over the projection to at least make that neutral, because we're already showing negative numbers in the future and we don't want to start now.
What would that make the rate, or what?
So currently the projections are at $3 for residential, $9 for commercial, and industrial is $15 increase for the whole year. 3, 9,
And-
15.
Okay.
My suggested would be $12 residential, 24, and 48.
4 times for residential?
It's
The $3 is the increase, correct? On
The
top of what
increase.
we already charge.
so
So
Yeah.
what would a residential customer pay with that increase?
it would go from $10.50, what they pay right now, to $11.50
Oh, okay.
per month. And then
that would make it neutral?
Yes.
No, okay.
And then commercial would go from $21 to $23 per month. And industrial would go from 42 to 46 per month. And that would make it, I think it was about $1,000 cash positive.
And that's before results from the rate study going into the future.
Yes. So that would be an additional ask that I would give to the board and say it was finance committee blessing
Right.
that they agree that we should not be going cash negative already if we can fix that.
Right, and that's consistent with our goal of making each of the utilities.
Independently, but viable.
Economically viable,
Yeah, yeah.
or say it another way, properly charging for the services that are being rendered.
The cost of service study that they did 5 years ago, did they not look at stormwater, or we did make an increase? I can't remember.
There was an increase every year.
Okay.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough for.
Yeah, the first 4 years or 3 years was a 20% increase, and then they started backing
Okay.
off. So with the suggested increase, it is a 9.5% increase over what they're paying now.
For 2027.
Seven. That would start in May bills.
And that would make stormwater neutral,
Mhm.
if you will, as opposed to negative.
Yes.
The stormwater deficit is
$29,000.
Yes.
But it's the deficit, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's flagging even the small things to be watching,
To try to stay out of that.
as opposed to, well, that storm. Yeah, no, it's not a problem. We'll figure it out later.
We do have to be a little careful with this because the way cash flow works, financial debt issuance also shows up as a source of cash flow. So conceptually, you could go out and take a huge amount of debt, and if the debt payment's little, all of a sudden, and it could be for stormwater, all of a sudden there'd be a huge surge of cash into stormwater. Doesn't necessarily mean you're economically viable. But Kim is looking at this and saying at the current rate structure, we don't have enough. We're not charging enough for the service that's being rendered
Now,
now.
Yes. And for the projects that are going to be coming up, putting it into a negative territory.
right.
we are pretty lucky that we're even this close to start when doing this kind of analysis. That you can fix it with $1.
Yes. Okay, so after that, lines 21 through 25, as I said, the wastewater is also going to cash negative starting in 2031, which we already knew rates needed to be increased with the wastewater treatment plant. Large, large investment. So that is something very much that I want to pay attention to with the 5-year projections and what we build, what they say we need. And I'd like to work through that with the finance committee as well, as we're working with the consultant.
When you have
Obviously.
projections in the justification for that,
Yes, so
changed any, but they were about $800 per residential customer
yes.
per year.
So for fiscal year 28 through fiscal year 27, I don't have any rate increases in there because there's nothing approved. And then from here out, we will start working of what we actually need and what the consultant says, where that varies, why it varies. Yes.
But if we are putting in for this year in 27, the proposed budget,
Mhm.
again for line 23.
Okay.
The
We are bringing cash in this year
yeah,
for wastewater.
And is
Okay,
it,
but it goes, okay, stormwater, I thought you said went negative in,
Stormwater starts
31.
going negative in 32.
okay, 32.
Mhm.
Okay, I was just comparing if the budget now proposal is 182 and why would it not be something similar, like in the 180s, 190s, I see, but then it went down to 111. Why would it go
That-
negative?
That's gonna be coming from projects for, I think the debt payments on.
Richard, you can see the capital kind of a sort of a pseudo summary of the capital projects on line 9. So that's affecting your needing to find cash to pay for those, whether that's borrowing or whether that's taking out of the net operations of that particular area.
And if you go to page 16 for Lewis BPW debt,
right?
you can see that we are starting to make debt payments in stormwater in 2030. Line 9. And you can see that increasing as you go through the years as we're taking on more projects.
Mhm.
Then it goes down. If I'm looking at stormwater on page 16,
Yep.
line 4.
No, line
Yeah,
9.
Line 9.
So these are your principal payments that you're paying from that new debt that you're bringing in.
You could add that to line number 24, which is your interest payment on that debt as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we got projects coming in and debt payments, increasing the need for cash.
A big portion of the improvement in operations of the waste treatment plant is the change in rate from for the treatment of the work from the county. Shouldn't we start locking that up in a different account that because you're also not paying the anticipated $2.3 million until the county does its work. I mean, we got $40 million obligation there.
Yes. So I can create a general ledger account to track Sussex County revenue. Because right now it's all being lumped into residential in our GL. But
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying is we got a temporary benefit that may last 3 years, maybe 7, but that's part of the agreement to pay 40 million.
Mhm.
So keeping track of it separately is maybe a good idea.
You think?
So do you want all of the revenue or the difference between what the original rate was and what the increase was?
I would think it's just a difference, but
Okay.
and I would suggest just that if we get any pluses from a better operation of the sewage treatment plant, lower cost than the $1 million, that go in similar.
Yeah. Okay. And then
Similarly, in what way? It's just a second tracking
Yeah, I think
separate
if
from
it's
the
a-
first tracking?
Yeah.
Here's what I'm worried
Decrease
about
in
just
it.
long term is out there where you start showing wastewater going negative, you know, or we're needing a rate increase. We at least would have the numbers to say, well, we conservatively
Mhm.
track that number and we know how much it is and we have $40 million to pay, but we saved $5 million or whatever.
Okay.
Okay, and put it into reserves or it came out in reserves.
And it's also a good talking point too.
I'm appointing myself public relations behind Sharon.
Well,
And it is starting next fiscal year, 2028, for us to make the $3 million payment. I checked with Gina to see if that's when they were still expecting it. And then the year after that was the municipal bond starting.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I don't think they'll be that fast, so I'm thinking we'll have a bigger bank. Okay,
That's why I checked with her again, because it felt like we were behind schedule, but she still said yes. So. Okay. So, with that, I had questions of the documents to the board. I was thinking pages 4 through 8 to the board, which are the summaries and the net income. And then the last pages for the capital expenditures of the 10 years. Because we formally did not adopt it in at the board meeting. So I'm still working on old documents, and I would like everyone to be on the same page.
We didn't adopt what?
To use this for the budgeting.
Oh.
So for the meeting coming up on Wednesday, I used the old documents. This information, but the old documents.
This is the latest.
Yeah,
Oh, you showed the results, but in the old format?
yes,
Right.
Okay.
yes. And I would love to not have to do multiple formats.
Mhm.
But so the suggestion is for next board meeting, there's 2 presentations so that people can see there's no difference. Or
So there is
trust
going,
me, there's no difference.
there is going to be a difference because this is cash flow versus the income statement.
Okay. And how will that matter to the board? What's, as a distinction or, public?
This is more informative to make decisions versus what we're recording in accounting.
How is it different?
If we're recording expenses and revenues, that doesn't mean that cash is actually coming in when it's recorded. Or sometimes it gets written off.
The income statement approach uses something called accrual accounting. Kim's doing cash accounting here, so it's a little bit different way to look at it.
Yes, when it comes to.
Accrual accounting will, for example, have things like depreciation expenses, which are not in here because she's actually doing the exact time the cash is needed to fund projects and things like that. There's some subtle accounting differences, but they are a different way to look at the problem.
Okay, but that kind of explanation
Mhm.
of why this is our proposal, so there's not 2 sets of books, if you will.
Yes.
By the way, most organizations will use both accrual accounting, so they'll do a formal income statement, and they'll do cash accounting, they'll do a formal cash flow statement.
Right.
I mean, Kim essentially could build an entire income structure to do budgeting as well that would supplement or go with the cash accounting. But the question is, when are when's enough? The thing with cash flow accounting, your business goes bankrupt when these numbers go red because you're not, basically means you don't have cash to pay your debt service and whatever else, the operations of the business. And so a lot of finance people tend to use cash accounting when they're thinking about the value of a business. Timing of the cash flows matters too. Whereas accrual accounting has a lot of smoothing techniques and things. So we made a decision. I know most people aren't going to remember this, but we made a decision very early on in this whole process of building this framework to take a cash accounting approach as opposed to accrual accounting approach. It was a conscious effort. And they both have pros and cons. And accrual accounting is widely and heavily used, and it's a required statement. And our auditors put together an accrual-based statement for the organization, as well as a cash flow statement for the organization.
Right. But the cash flow statement gives a better picture of current and future risk
It gives a different view than accrual accounting does.
Right.
But accrual accounting oftentimes is used for the historical. This is what happened. And so income statements, for example, that show a company's current profitability, they use income in a corporate setting is an accrual accounting concept.
Okay.
Okay, but
when you're forecasting the future, which is what we're doing here, this is all about the future. What we're starting to think about now is, when does that cash actually come in the door? We have a $40 million obligation. Are we going to be able to pay for it in 4 years? It doesn't matter whether you have depreciation, accounts receivable, and all that kind of stuff. The question is, do you have cash on hand? Do you believe you're going to have cash on hand to make those debt payments? And when you're valuing an asset, this is the company here is an asset in effect.
Mhm.
It matters whether that cash is coming in 1 year or 20 years. I don't know if you remember, we talked about a lot of this before, where if I said I was going to give you $1,000 next year, or I'm going to give you $1,000 20 years from now, which one would you value more? You would value $1,000 next year a lot more than you would value $1,000 20 years from now. So the timing of cash flows matter, but accrual accounting smooths over a lot of that kind of stuff, whereas cash accounting makes the realizations of cash, whether it's 1 year out or 5 years out or 20 years out, explicit. And so I think from valuing a business and thinking about its economic viability, if you had to have one statement to think about budgeting, it's the cash accounting.
Particularly in an organization like this, where we have a lot of assets in the ground, one way or the other, but knowing that they're worth $60 million doesn't help Robin with rate setting next year. I mean, it's $60 million and you depreciate it over 40 years and so on, but it doesn't really tell you much about what you can do.
Well, it's even more confusing than that, because if that pipe went in 30 years ago and cost $1 million, that same pipe today might cost $8 million, but you're depreciating $1 million off. So then you don't have, you're so far, and that's the problem with historical cost of using historical values, which is an issue I have, and why we kind of felt that cash accounting from a future perspective would give us a more succinct. In other words, Kim's not putting in a price of a pipe 30 years ago, and she's going to the engineers and saying, what does this pipe cost? What's it cost today?
So if these 4 pages with cash flow gives the board, it's the 4 pages and a 5 and 10 year picture all at once, is a better product for the board to look at and be aware of and to make decisions on, rather than the accrual.
I don't want to confuse two different things. Kim could actually do a 10-year projection using accrual accounting methods, or she could do a 10-year projection using cash flow accounting methods.
Right.
She's doing a 10-year projection using cash flow methods. Now, we think using cash flow to think about the timing of cash flows, when they're coming in, are we going to be able to meet debt obligations and things like that, is the right way to think about it. And we think having the future cost of the capital expenditures not based on something that was in the ground 30 years ago is also a better way to think about the business. But whether you do a 1 year out, a 5 year out, or a 10 year out is irrespective of whether you use cash flow or accrual accounting. We think because a business's economic viability is based on its future, you need to take a forward view of the business. And the longer you can do that, the more likely you will catch a train coming in the tunnel, so to speak. Kim can't project out 10 years perfectly by any means.
Right.
But this by pushing the group to think about 10 years out, it's forcing a discipline to say, okay, what kind of capital projects do we got? You got to start, how many homes can we put in? How many so it forces you to start to at least think about that.
Yeah.
And that's why these numbers, Kim is taking you to specific areas on here, but the operating activity, this top 4 lines on page 4, are really important, because that's really, at the end of the day, that's the economic engine of the organization. You can fudge a whole lot of stuff by raising debt and deferring projects and all that kind of stuff. And Kim's already pointed out that we probably deferred a lot of things we probably shouldn't. But at the end of the day, the economic engine is the operation of this thing. And if you've got a lot of red up there in that top 4 or 5 rows, eventually it's going to, you can muddle along for a while, eventually take on debt and all that stuff, and eventually it's going to catch up to you.
But currently, what's been presented to the board on the accrual basis is not as effective as the cash flow that also projects out 10 years, which the framework provides.
I would probably say that we think that for forecasting, for budgeting purposes, for forecasting, we think the cash flow approach is more insightful than we would get from an accrual method. It's not that accrual method is bad. It's not that it's inappropriate, but you can see how extensive it is just to do a cash flow. If Kim had to do a whole separate system of accrual, we would never be able to make a decision. We'd be spending all the time tweaking the model.
Right.
This thing is, Richard, you and I always talked about what we're trying to see with the financial stuff is the whole elephant. And we think that this cash flow method with a 10-year view is giving us a view of the economic viability of this organization.
Mhm.
And we're seeing the whole elephant, so to speak.
It's complicated. I would suggest that while we've wrestled with this, the board has not been Richard been part of that, and probably some executive education, either in a formal meeting with the board, not as part, not just as part of a board meeting, but to give them a model and let them study it in whatever ways they do, and to take them through it is an important step. Okay, and it takes their time, but for them
it's
to get,
needed in order for them to follow.
at the end of this meeting, we're probably going to say motion to do it, but to adopt this and use it, but the board needs the same. It's a fair step, so I think that ought to be put in the plan, either, present it next week, but give them an opportunity sometime in the next 30 days before the budget stuff.
And treat it as though they don't know. I remember an incident when I had a director who came into an organization, and I finally recognized that he really was not in tune. It was the Smithsonian's mail order, $25 million operation. And I'm sitting here talking to him about various accounts of various reports, and I'm looking at his face. And it was apparent to me he wasn't following me. So after the meeting, I had a conversation with him, and I said, I have a great idea. Harvard is offering so-and-so for a non-executive so-and-so class. It wouldn't hurt you to take it. He literally took it. And he came back, and he was a lot better with understanding. He had a $25 million operation, and he didn't know one sheet from another. But he did know his merchandise business. He knew it backwards and forwards. So what I'm saying to you is simply not just make an assumption that people know finance. And you're spot on. We have it, we can agree on it, but you have an off meeting with them in terms of, look, who does, and you just put it like it is, who doesn't know what? And you approach it like that and make sure that you're on the same sheet of music. It's a very smart thing. It worked for me. You had a guy run an operation. He knew his business, but he did not know his finances.
I knew a vice president of sales for a military contractor, and he was smart enough to call in the accountant and say,
I don't know this.
I don't know this.
That's right.
You tell me to start at the bottom or the top.
That's right. And it works too. It works. And in this particular case, because it's so much, we can't just say, well, we all approve it, we understand it, and then give it to them and say, sign off on it. It doesn't work like that.
And you need to engage them. So however the board wants to do it.
So at the board meeting, Richard was going to talk about this framework, and I was going to offer my time to sit with anybody individually that would like to come in, go over the model.
Okay, but I also think they ought to do it in a group somehow, because Carolyn's question, you think,
They have to be on the same sheet of music. Individually is fine, but you get a lot from talking with one another.
however you do it, you need to get the board confident in this model and not just confident in Kim.
If we are doing more than 2 at a time, it has to be a public meeting.
That's fine. I'm just
Yeah, just an
however you
idea.
do it,
Yeah.
the board needs to be saying in May, put it into the model.
And I think the more confidence the board has in
Mhm.
the approach, the more confident they're going to be when rate changes have to come.
Yeah.
Looking customers in the eye and saying, we don't want our rates going up either, but this is why. And
That's because they're gonna get hit with that.
there are plenty of people that are out in the ether that can give an educational piece of basic accounting that would have nothing to do with this model. We've got an approach where we've taken a particular aspect of accounting and made it into a formalized model of this business. But this isn't something made up. This is a cash flow statement. This is a widely used, it's been around forever.
So it's actually required that you have a cash flow statement to actually show what's happening with your cash along with the accrual. It is a requirement of accounting.
Mhm.
which will still happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to.
But it's the presentation of,
To the board.
to the board of the 4 pages on a quarterly basis, not every meeting.
So it'll be for budget. And then after that, I would like to do it quarterly with finance committee and then with the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The finance committee would review the quarterly projection
Mhm.
and then make a recommendation to the board in a presentation. And
The new
between
projected
that
numbers,
time,
et cetera.
the 2 or 3 months between meetings, what does the board see having to do with finances?
I wouldn't know what to give them if it's not going to be updated. That if finance committee is not going to look at it first.
Okay, so this is now, is there a perception that, we want to see the details every month?
Then I would have to use the old documents.
Okay. How much
They won't let us
of a
see it.
negative is that they won't be seeing at every meeting, which they have in the past? And it's just a question. How to
I
answer-
guess
how
that's a
to
question
answer-
for them.
How to
but-
answer that,
But I would say that quarterly is,
Sufficient.
if we are confident in reviewing quarterly here,
right?
then that is the recommendation of the finance committee that it gets presented to them
Okay,
every quarter. And reviewing every month, and like you guys know in the paperwork, your monthly, there's a whole bunch of highlights of what's going on that month, and then for your year to date, it balances out. It just, something happened there, so in the quarter, it won't be so loud,
okay.
and
So
you can see how things
that's-
are flowing
that's
through.
part of the recommendation of the finance committee to the board for implementing the framework as the
Yes.
primary tool for cash flow.
And doing quarterly reviews with the
Right.
finance committee, then bringing it to the board.
I think Carolyn and Bob are right on. This could be a very esoteric conversation about the different types of accounting. There's so many things changing. I would say one thing that changed is accrual versus income accounting, but there's 100 other things that have changed on here. The detail of this model and the 10-year view and a lot of other things, the usage of federal or professional forecasters, inflation forecast. I mean, there's probably 10,000 things that have changed in here relative to what was there. Accrual versus cash flow accounting is one of many. Question is, when you go into that board meeting, which of the things that changed are worth highlighting to the board?
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that accrual versus cash flow isn't one of them, but I have a feeling nobody would know what the difference between the two. So is that really a useful? Well,
I wouldn't.
Bob would, but
Yeah, you know about this.
I meant the non-finance committee member.
But it's also important that Robin and Sharon understand this.
Oh, sure.
Okay, and I'm
Sure.
not sure that, I mean,
We'll start with them.
But I think your point is a good one. If you had maybe somebody from University of Delaware could come down and do a 2-hour, basic, financial statement analysis. That's really what it's financial statement analysis.
Finance 101.
sounds like Carolyn.
I've been out of it too long.
So unless she wants to.
Been there, been there.
Okay.
I mean, maybe the question to Sharon and Robin, because you guys have sat through a lot of these meetings, does this still feel very Greek? And be honest, because you guys don't
Yeah,
come from
right.
this background.
No, I've learned a lot. I mean, again, talking to Kim, other than these meetings, I mean, there's been discussions and stuff, not that we're going through every page with
Yeah.
her and stuff like that, but I understand, again, a lot more than what I did when you guys first started dealing with the framework.
Okay, but let me set what I think is the standard. You should you should rely on Kim,
Yes,
but just like Ronald Reagan, you should
and verify.
trust and verify.
yes, correct. Yep.
Because we know Kim might go off the deep end or something.
He's starting already, Kim.
Mhm.
But to Robin's point, though, he's had many hours of sitting
Yeah.
through this, and to show up for 15 minutes at a board meeting and say, "Here's,"
Yeah, you're just saying, oh, Robin trusted, Sharon trusted, Kim trusted, Richard trusted. Let's
So-
do it. That's not a good decision.
My argument is that the finance committee was created because the board did not want to make the decisions. They just wanted it reviewed by someone, by a group that was capable of making those decisions and then bringing it forward. Not for them to actually get
bringing
the
it
framework.
forward is the point. Bringing it forward. Yes, they wanted that committee and they have that committee. Our responsibility is to make sure when we do a presentation to them, they know what the hell we're talking about. And not
Okay.
get into minutia and giving them just what they need. And it doesn't hurt, but make sure they understand what we're saying. I mean, I've watched the blank faces of giving a presentation 1,000 times. And I'm just simply saying for the amount of work that's been put into this,
Yeah.
just cut out what they need to specifically know and watch when they get the quarterly reports, for example. What are you looking for? It sounds simple, but for people who are not numbers people, it's not simple. Some people get intimidated with numbers.
I don't think it should. I agree with what Carolyn said. And in the future, you have new board members
Mhm.
who would need to be brought up to speed and
Yeah, you can.
made comfortable with the fact that this number is going up or down or whatever.
I mean, one of the beauties of this committee is, most of them come in here with some kind of finance background. But you're still learning every time we go through stuff like this. I mean, this is not an area that I worked my professional career in. Board of Public Works, no. I was in corporate and a bunch of other stuff. So it was an education for me. But the way you presented it, the way that you give us time to get it and spending time with the right people takes me to a better place. And how fortunate we are to have you, buddy, because it makes me feel comfortable in anything that I'm thinking of or decisions we have to make. And we have to make them feel comfortable. It's just that simple. That we don't just do a presentation to them and it's a blanket. I watched blanket once before. And I don't want to tell you where, but the point is that, this doesn't worth the amount of time you spend on a project and people who you're presenting it to have no idea what the hell you're talking about. And I'm not saying that's what this group is. I'm just simply saying for the amount of time, and you guys have spent a considerable amount of time in this, that we make sure they understand where we are.
it's funny. We're in a good position where everybody's actually making the right point. The users, the board who's representing the population, the customer base, it's got to have a basic understanding of finance in the sense that it's a different way of looking at the business, but it is a way of looking at the business and it's an important way of looking at the business. But Kim's right in that what is the role of the finance committee? Because you don't want to go through the exact same stuff yet again, so maybe this allows us to fine tune a little bit what level the board needs to be at to be able to consume Kim's recommendations, but also maybe it makes us fine tune a little bit about what role the finance committee is going to play. Do we focus more on the inputs that Kim's putting in here? Because any model is subject to garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
If Kim jacks up, the number of households by 5 times or something, that'll affect the model. So what are the things we should be going through as a committee so that when we go to the board, it's not another 2 or 3 hour meeting. It's, we've been through the numbers with Kim and we think.
Well, I heard Richard one day say, different meeting, different subject. The board is a popularity contest. It's not necessarily somebody picked for expertise in a certain area. So I think it would be good going forward that the finance committee be the center of numbers and a recommendation to the board, which might consist of people who know about rates, people who know about electricity, people who know about, other things. So I think kind of building the credibility of this committee and its successors is a good thing. But offering them detailed understanding and this change is worthwhile. But
There is a policy that I presume that most people know that the board authorized the creation of a finance committee made up of blah, blah, quack, quack. So the policy exists to empower finance committee to advise and report to the board.
Yeah, you said that.
So what we are and making sure that the current board members, that was a starting point where we're trying to do a transition of presentation or improvement of the financial infrastructure that makes a difference, the cash flow versus the accrual. That we're proposing that this be accepted and used on a quarterly basis, where every quarter the finance committee reviews the finance manager's update and then report forward to the board that quarter's recommendation. And in the meantime, verify before, if it's possible, verify that the board members individually understand the cash flow model, so that it doesn't sound completely foreign or off the chart.
That's where 101.
Bob and I are both on the board.
Do you have people running for re-election on the board
Yes.
right now?
Yes. Barbara and
press.
Oh, press too.
Okay.
Thanks.
Press,
Oh, they're interested in
I
Spain.
know, has had a presentation and I believe understands the value. So that's a third member. Tom, I don't think has ever seen it because he has been so involved in the negotiations with Sussex. And that's, I think, is the key person that hasn't seen it or known about it. Barbara has known about it and seen it a little bit along the way, but she too was pulled away on the negotiations. So I think it's not such a big effort to see if Tom can make time for us to privately or independent of the committee, you know, that him or and show him so he's familiar with it before the presentation next week. Make sense or not?
This presentation will be next month. It'll be in March. The presentation next week is going to be the old documents, and it'll come up as the suggestion to switch over to Finance Committee documents. And between that meeting on the 25th and the March meeting on the 25th.
Once you'll be kicking off your new one.
Yeah, that's when the meetings have to happen, that education.
Okay. So we don't have to,
It wouldn't hurt to do, try to get Tom's attention this week.
One would think.
Okay.
I mean, at some point you have to break.
Because he's gonna be asked to vote on a motion to do that. Switch.
The Tuesday's open.
Can I ask you, so Kim has been producing a budget for as long as she's been here, and there was a budget produced before then. I don't know what framework, I don't know what the spreadsheets look like. Was there any approval of how it was done?
Yeah, how was
Or was it just simply presented?
Simply presented.
Simply presented.
really?
So what it feels to me like there's 10,000 things that have changed between what Kim used to do and this. The accrual versus a cash flow thing seems to me to be a technicality that probably doesn't have much meaning. The real thing was became a much more detailed, holistic structure that brought in a lot of things into one unified framework. So we got reserve policy is in here. We've got capital expenditure structures in here. We've got working capital structures in here. We pushed it out 10 years. We've got formal monitoring tools where we can watch, how the year is progressing, which becomes those are really the things that really matter, the big things. This accrual versus cash flow and all that. I think it would be great for the board to have some kind of a background education on financial statements. I think that could be really helpful.
Well, they used, yeah.
But Kim is probably in the best position to articulate the real meaningful changes here and the insights that this would give relative to the old approach. Mm-hmm. And frankly, Richard, this gets back to what you said originally when we first started this thing. You said, I don't want us to be doing something because that's the way we always did it. I want us to rethink things fresh and try to think about how we would do it. So things like going from 5-year to 10-year, and those are the integration of all the policies, the major financial policies in here, the tracking of debt, the tracking of interest payments, all in one framework. That's really what matters. Eventually, cash flow and accrual accounting will catch up to each other. But you have to pick one. And we think there's reasons to have cash flow, but that's of secondary importance.
I think this is, certainly vast improvement, because to summarize what used to happen was Kim would put up a bunch of numbers. They all had the last, everything past the thousands line had all three numbers in it, $416 of electrical sales, and in 20 million. And everybody went blind.
Yeah.
And then Kim said, next year's okay if we do this. And everybody said, thank you.
That's what they wanted to hear.
And that was the level of scrutiny.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah, and I'll just say for the preparation for the budget before, it's not that I didn't do all of this, but it was in that spreadsheet and then this spreadsheet and then this spreadsheet and this spreadsheet and then my handwritten notes and yeah. That this is all together now for everyone to look at,
I mean, this
to
is
see the connections.
Just think, just last quarter, Kim came to this group and said, I want to make a change in the allocation of expenses across the different. You go to the allocate, now it's laid out because it's part of the framework. It's a meaningful financial variable. We go to the allocation page. This is what I want to change. This is what happens. Today she comes in and she says, we've got some negative numbers here. We're kind of on the line. I'd like to increase the storm. You can do that in a holistic discussion because it's all laid out right here. It's nice and clean. We can make these kinds of things without saying, well, geez, can you run that report or can you do
Right.
this or
Exactly.
could you look at it this way? It's all here. It's all unified. It's all looked at in the exact same way. It's transparent. Richard, one of the things that we thought was really important early on was transparency. It doesn't get any more transparent.
Okay, so for today's discussion, what are we recommending to the board? Quarterly presentations reviewed by the finance committee before it goes to the board.
The presentation documents will be changed. And then a conversation of individual meetings versus a public workshop.
Mhm.
Okay, and
That's the
these
education meetings.
documents are going to be just referred to that we're now using them, but we want to make sure that all of the board members understand how positive this change is and how valuable it will be, no matter who the board members are, cast the characters. There is a framework that works.
And for this meeting, I can print off the pages that they would be looking at to give an example of
Yes,
what they're looking at.
as a starting point.
Yeah.
Yes, just don't overwhelm.
You might give them a couple others, such as this is the number of meters of 5/8 inch diameter. This is, one little pick water or something that's sort of understandable and show them how it rolls up.
Doesn't it depend on I don't know the background of your board in terms of whether they're coming to this utility business with the knowledge of things or I don't know if that's background.
Some do, some don't. Some do. Some.
Barbara was health and safety for 40 years.
Okay,
Press is sewage treatment construction
okay,
for 40 years.
I know
With
Tom
nuclear
personally.
power
right, I
for
know.
40 years.
Okay, so you don't have to start at basic because of that kind of knowledge. All right, that's what I needed to know. But again, they may have that, but doing it from a financial perspective is entirely different.
So Kim, correct me if I'm wrong. So I think we were thinking that when we present this to the board, we were thinking the cash flow summary, so pages 4 through 8 is what they would receive.
Yeah.
Plus whatever page the actual 5-year budget plan.
So this is
and
10
then-
years. And
And 10-year, okay, 10-year. But they only approve 5 years. I think that is what we would give them.
Mhm.
Now, if they wanted to go into more detail, that would be the conversation. Hey, how did you get to this number?
Yes, let them ask.
And then they can ask us and they can come to us and we can say, yep, we've got all that. It's in the weeds. And I think for the purpose of the board meetings, I don't know that we want to get in the weeds. Now,
No,
we,
but you open it up for anyone
Correct.
interest.
And follow-up presentations.
Absolutely.
Individually.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's
I think-
exactly the perspective.
Yeah.
right?
okay.
At least that's how I see it.
Should we write down beforehand the motion we want the board to take, such as adopting this I think it'd be probably better than,
I guess that's the
Yeah.
question of, do they need to adopt,
Before knowing.
because this is an internal process, do they actually need to adopt a process? It's not actually a policy.
Let's put it another way. Are they going to adopt before the understanding?
Well, Kim's
No.
question whether they should
Yeah.
adopt, period.
Yeah,
It's-
it's really up to
Exactly.
them if it's,
It's a
Correct.
presentation that recommends that the budget has been reviewed by
Oh, I
the
see. It's different.
Finance Committee. And here is the Cliff's Notes of what it is. And you may be, you want to vote now to accept the budget, that's fine, but you have another month.
I'm gonna tell them not to.
I see. Right.
Therefore,
Right.
it's been introduced via this template,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And in offered, look, there's 51 pages
Mhm.
that make this up. Some of us have seen it, understand it a little better. But we want to make sure that each of the board members has an opportunity to see the whole picture, all 51 pages, the pros and cons, answer questions to help them become comfortable in
What's being presented.
what's being presented and that the Finance Committee has done due diligence in working up this framework and reporting back to the board, which the board requested.
I agree. I would look for maybe a voice vote. Doesn't have to be a policy or anything like that, but I would suggest maybe saying we direct staff to move forward with using this framework in the budget forecasting process. That way it gives us direction.
I think that's a good idea.
I did,
Right.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
We can check with Mike
yep,
Hoffman.
Yep.
To make sure that that's kosher.
yep. And then I would almost recognize, I feel like we got good feedback. Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, that we provided that recommendation and kind of set the expectation of what we were looking for beforehand. So I don't know if you want us to draft something up or you work with Kim. You know how we did the staff recommendations this past month in the board meeting?
No,
No, you did all that work and you didn't even look at it.
I just don't remember.
And it just kind of says, this is like the background here, and then we provided what we were looking for, like, what was the, what did we do?
Now you're forgot.
Like we did the fire
You did
department
a lot.
donation.
Fire,
We recommended that we stick with what was already improved and then looked at it for the next year's budget because it was already established.
Right.
But you knew that expectation, what we were expecting and what we
Yes.
recommended ahead of time.
That would be safer.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So all of that, I am suggesting another meeting before we actually approve and give it to the board as the suggested budget. One being the change of stormwater fees. I would like to do a PCA audit. I don't think our base number is correct.
PCA.
Power cost adjustment for electric. I don't think the base number that is being used that actually calculates what we should be charging is correct, and I would need some time to sit with that. Checking again with GMB and the city. As you guys know, that we do work with the city and try to plan when they are tearing up the streets and sidewalks already, that we do the pipes at the same time. So that helps us both. And updating with January information, because right now it's just through December. And that,
Okay.
the suggested date that I had was the 13th of March. So that will give me another week and a half before the board meeting.
Are you saying we'd get together again as a
Yep.
finance committee? Okay.
Yep. And I would think that it would be a much quicker conversation that we've all seen it. And I'll make a list of things that I changed since we
Okay.
last saw it.
So we should probably take a vote so that we can say, yes, we reviewed it and we voted that it should be forwarded to the board for consideration. Yes, no?
No,
Yeah.
Kim doesn't-
Not for finalized. So our bylaws is that they have to have a draft a month before the rates would go into effect.
Right,
So that's what we're providing on Wednesday, is the draft. And then in March, after we review again, will be the adoption. That's no longer, well, I guess it is a draft until they adopt, but and then becomes the official budget for 2027.
But we do need a vote for your consensus that, yes, you recommend using this to the board, and then we will take that recommendation to the board on
Okay.
Wednesday.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Perfect.
Can't take it unless we say, okay.
Yes.
Oh, that.
do we have to do a motion and a second? And a vote?
Yeah.
Who's making the motion?
He
Mike,
is.
Mike just, yeah.
Absolutely. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Well,
There you go.
vote carries.
Okay,
Thank you.
and that's all the notes I had for the budget.
Can I make a comment on
So what's the next?
And the next
Mike
meeting,
wants to make a couple comments.
a couple comments? One, Carolyn asked about the PCA, the power cost adjustment. Since I've gotten involved in this organization, I thought that thing was a nasty, overly complicated device from the consultant to adjust costs or energy charges. And I think we should consider what's called a markup model, which just says the organization pays X amount of cents for electric. We need to charge 2 more cents to be profitable. So we buy it off, from a DMAC, is it?
Yep.
So we buy electric and then redistribute it. There's got to be some difference in cost or difference in price between what customers pay and the utility pays to be economically viable. That to me is the right way to think about it.
I agree.
The PCA is a very complicated obfuscation, I think, of what really needs to be done. Kim has already had conversations, and I'll let you do your
Yeah,
thing.
that's exactly what I was gonna say is I have talked to our current rate setters and they don't seem very comfortable of changing it because this is the way that everyone else does it.
Yeah, well, that's a
Um,
good reason.
is.
However, we have
always.
We modeled it. It's actually in here, the PCA. But
However, we have met with other forecasters and cost of service providers that are more open to adjusting to what our needs and wants are and not how everyone else does it.
Mm,
Well, last month, I asked you a question that sort of was related
Yep.
to that. And you wrote me the answer.
I hated writing the answer.
Yeah.
I was like, I got
And I
it.
looked at it
If it makes sense.
and I didn't understand it. And I thought, I'll have to go talk to her.
Yeah.
So, and my simple question was, with all this cold weather and people using more electricity, how much more does, the whole thing, what's our incremental revenue versus what we pay for a homeowner? And I couldn't figure it out. And so I don't even know what power cost adjustment is.
So the power cost adjustment is taking our rate that we charge the customer and breaking that down of the part of that is going towards paying for the purchase of power. And then the rest is going towards projects and operating expenses. So taking that base that's broken now versus what we're actually paying and then making that charge on top of the base rate.
So that would be things like
okay.
losses in transmission.
Yep.
It might be
There's a timing difference that we get billed from the first to the last of the month. And then our bills go out 15th to the 15th. So there's the difference there of the kilowatts sold versus kilowatts purchased.
Does any of the operating expenses like we replaced a transformer get in there?
No, this is strictly the power cost, the purchase of power.
Well, the amount you put over top of that needs to make the entity economically viable. So they do take into account. So Kim has to supply them a lot of information to come up with their estimate. It's not like a super mathematically complicated formula. It just is ridiculous. It doesn't have to be this complicated.
But why is it?
If
they
we
have a
said,
problem
if
with
we
it?
said we have to charge 3 cents more for each kilowatt that the organization buys to be economically viable, that's what a markup is. Your markup's three basis
Yeah.
points. Or
But do
3
they have a
cents.
problem with that?
Well, I'll let Kim does the works with them. So
And if so,
Yes.
why?
Because that's how they model it, and that's how
it's always been
all
done.
the other.
Oh, so see, I
subsidiaries do it.
cannot handle that kind of
Yeah.
answer.
So I do think that should be talked about for fiscal year 2028. And then for fiscal year 2027, I want to do that audit because we have had rate increases where that base did not increase.
So to be clear, what Kim just said, it's complicated enough that it's actually caused some mistakes along the way as well.
Mhm.
And they have sent in their spreadsheet. I spent hours on that thing and I could not figure out what the hell was going on in that spreadsheet. It didn't need to be that complicated. So I don't know if the thing they sent was to
Confused.
confuse,
Mhm.
but you don't need it. You just need a markup model. It's very simple.
Just because it's.
And as Kim
done
said,
that
she's
way.
ran into some other rate consultants that are willing to
Oh, well,
help us
Is your-
do it that way. So.
there's your answer.
Okay, the second thing I want to talk about, if you go to page 16 of the model. If you look at lines 1 through 4,
Mhm.
Kim has debt here, new debt taken on by each one of the utilities. And so the question is there, we probably should approve as a finance committee, or at least work out a lot of, do these different utilities need to be raising this level of debt? And what's the debt being raised for? So you could go back to page 4 and see that some of these are going to be building some very large, and by the way, Kim's thinking a lot about this. I just want to kind of articulate it to the rest of the board
Mhm.
or the rest of the finance committee. But if you go to page 4, you'll see things like our lines 21 through 24. It should be thought of effectively like the bank account of each one of the utilities.
Okay.
So you'll see, for example, that the electric utilities bank account is at 3.9 million in 2027 budget, line number 21. Then it goes to 4.4 million, then it goes to 6.2 million and 8 million, and keeps going up and up and up.
Mhm.
But if you go to the debt page, well, that was a bad one because Kim doesn't
Yeah.
have the electric utility taking on any
Because
debt.
we have so much money that we're
So
not
much
making
money.
any debt.
But
So much money.
I
So
don't,
much money.
I don't have a recommendation for whether we should take on debt or whether it's the right debt. What I'm trying to talk about is the framework now lays this all out. And we should start to think about, do we need to be taking on debt? Should we be using more operating income, internal funds to fund projects,
As opposed to taking on more
as
debt.
opposed to taking on debt? And if you go to the back of, let's see, we'll go to the, I guess we'll just go to the, well, no, not the electric one, the water, it's the water. That little model.
Page 48.
48. If you go to page 48. If you've probably all seen this before, but these are all the capital projects foreseen by the water utility and the years that the cash is going to be needed to fund those projects. But what we've done here is like on lines 1 through 13, I realize this is small.
Yeah.
I apologize, I'm struggling too. But 1 to 13, those are the ones that Kim has listed here as debt funded. So you can see the header on there is debt funded. Then if you go down to the next lines 14 through 19, they're grant funded. Obviously, it'd be great to have them all grant funded.
Mm-hmm.
But the question here is, should some of these ones that we have as debt funded, should they be internally, do we have enough internal funds to fund them? And you might say, well, if you don't have enough internal funds to fund them, you got two choices. You either raise debt or you raise your rates. In other words, there's a question about what capital projects ought to be internally funded and which ones ought to be externally funded. And let me give you an example. So one reason why that matters is because it affects who pays. So if you decide that you've got a project, let's say a pipe in the ground, that in 5 years from now it's going to have to be replaced and you're going to internally fund it, you're going to have to build reserves up so that when that cash flow comes due, you're going to pay that. Well, that reserve is being built up by current ratepayers. So the group paying for that pipe is the current ratepayers.
Yeah, but they're not going to benefit from it.
On the other hand, well, they might benefit, but they also may be wearing out the old pipe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say we have some kind of a new technology. This is complete BS, AI water treatment plant. And that's going to be a brand new facility and it's going to benefit users of that for the next 30 years. If you take debt on, the service of that debt will be the users over the next 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So by determining which projects are going to be debt funded, that's future payers paying it, versus reserve funded, internally funded, that's going to be the current users paying it. I think there's a reasonable case to say that things that need to be replaced because they're being worn out by current users, they should be paying for the reserve to replace that equipment in the future. That's what happens in a company. And that's why companies, they depreciate their plant and equipment, and they put that into the price of their product. So, but I think if we're doing new things, let's say that are supporting the build out of a whole new community or it's a whole new technology, and it's not the current users wearing something out, that probably should be reserved. I'm sorry, that probably should be debt funded so that the future users, pay that.
That falls into
So
it.
these are a little bit philosophical things, but I think we should, at some point, I think this committee should sort of try to grapple a little bit with, internally funding things. Really, it's who should pay for projects when it gets right down to it. And there's different ways of doing the finance to determine who's going to pay that.
Gotcha.
So if it comes to a point of that we think the current user should be paying for it, that the reserve should come to the reserve, but we don't have the funds, do we push that project down the line or do we just go out to get that debt?
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
You might say, look, we're kind of thinking about this at this point, and we're not going to have time to build up the internal funds to fund a project that's coming in 3 years. But the point is to start that process, that mental process. So then you're going to have grant funded, debt funded, and internally funded projects. That's really going to be the three.
Well, and the way this is laid out, at least you could say, okay, so-and-so street is as recently happened, the birth subdivision. We say, well, we've got, it says we can do it within 053, but it should be done sooner.
Right.
And move it in, let's say, and then move it to the right bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you could see how this could be a whole discussion of just simply going through one of the capital pages and just saying what projects should fall in what category. Then that feeds itself through the entire model about the debt we're taking on versus the reserves we're creating.
Mm-hmm.
And whether we can, we have the resources
Yes.
to do as many things as we're pushing around.
Yeah.
At that time, that realistically, there's lead time of equipment, if nothing else, but there's also a finite limit of valid contractors, vendors.
And I want to be clear, because I gave a list of 5 or 6 different initiatives I thought in the last meeting, including how we manage our cash reserves, should they be in money markets or sitting in a bank account and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That still needs to be addressed. I think that's really, really important. But I would add this thing about the debt and the markup models, 2 more things on our on our agenda.
Got a meeting every other week now to the end of the year.
Well, but now you can start to see, I'm not,
Yeah.
this is a little bit about, but you can start to see how, I know I sound defensive, I don't mean, but you can start to see how a framework like this, now the ideas start to percolate, right? I mean, we're going to have a very robust, I think we're going to have a very robust agenda as we continue to push through this. I'll tell you, I don't like the way some of the formulas go for the reserves either in the policy, and I think we should rethink some of those, but we don't need to throw another
At the
2 or
moment.
3 on for the moment, but
So,
But I think we should address the finance part of it that has to do with
Yeah.
the monies.
so on 313, does that work for everybody to do a final review of the budget?
Yeah, I'm good.
I think so. My
Okay.
wife signed me up for something that day. I
Okay.
think it's in the middle of the day.
So we're gonna go 313, the
10 o'clock.
usual 10 a.m. Okay.
And you know that's a Friday, right?
Friday the 13th, yes. We are aware.
That'd be the lucky day.
well, I thought you were saying because no one's going to be here. It's a Friday. I didn't even think about Friday the 13th. First thing, yeah.
And then the question is, do we just want to review this? Make sure we leave plenty of time to talk about it, or did you want to add one thing to start chipping away?
Another agenda item?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Not what you expected.
And it would have to be, I don't want to say easier, because you never know where their conversation's going to go, but it would have to be like a task that won't take hours to review, that if it's a 2-hour meeting.
Now, for a suggestion, Richard,
Sure.
because I think they're relatively quick and easy. I think we should make a decision on the bank
Uh-huh.
liquidity. So this organization has a lot of liquidity. It's in 2 different places. It's in reserves, which are at UBS, and it's in a bank account at Fulton. I think those 2 things should be thought about. I'm very loath to give my view. I'd rather people kind of get to their own conclusions, but I think I'll give you my view. I think our bank account, a big chunk of it should be stuck in a money market fund, a government money market fund, and we should maintain smaller transactional balances at Fulton Bank.
Absolutely.
The second thing is, I think that we should not have any money at UBS being managed by an advisor. I think all of those reserves should be in a money market fund.
Also, we don't have to pay.
And we don't have to pay advisory fees on that. So whatever we're paying Fulton, or whatever we're paying UBS will come back. I could also add, I'm not so sure those balances are so small that UBS even wants them, to be quite honest, but that's a whole different.
Well,
I think
yeah,
that's right.
that's probably why you're not getting the attention you need.
The advantage of a money market fund is it goes up, whereas
Always.
Yeah.
UBS goes up and down, and
We call them variable NAV values.
yeah.
You're saving for something, and when you get there, that might have been the day the market was down 20%, and you're like, where did my money go?
Yeah. I mean,
What did you mean by the minimum bank balances in Fulton?
Well, Kim's got to pay checks and things like that. Kim may say, look, to run this business, I need to have 700,000 in a bank account at any given time.
Yeah, that's
I
different.
don't need 5 million in the bank account.
That's right.
Correct.
But Kim's got to tell us what her comfort level is. We don't have a treasury office here that's managing cash flows every day and,
Right.
moving stuff around. Kim's got to be able to find that balance. It's somewhere between 0 and 5 million.
Okay.
and 5 million is there now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's on your financial statement.
But
But what
but
you
it's
make
also
say,
government back, that it's not the 250,000.
Correct. It is
Yeah.
a government account, so all of the funds are guaranteed.
Okay, here's what worries me about
That's the
that.
starting point.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Here's what worries me about that, because sometimes the devil's in the details of these contracts. They do a sweep account at night.
Yes.
That may
helps with
be
the-
swept into government securities, but at some point, I think we're gonna finally be a creditor of Fulton. And what worries me is if Fulton goes under, we're in line with the other creditors. above 250,000.
Right.
But if Fulton is putting it in really is it all sitting in a money market fund or a cash, or they're buying underlying T-bills, we could just put that in money. We don't have to, you could go to Vanguard and do that for a couple of basis points.
Yeah.
Show.
Well, we don't want to do that either. I think we want to put it in a money market fund.
Exactly.
It's so cheap now to do that. It's like buying milk or water.
I mean, one of the last things I did when I was with the city was exactly that. The money was sitting there as dead money.
Yeah.
And I said, anybody look at this? And I just said, look, let's just make a decision. Just throw some of this money in. And in that short period of time, I forgot how much we made before I got out of there.
But this isn't about making money. This is about you got a liquidity reserve that you got to know the value.
Yeah.
If we were in a perpetuity endowment like the Children's Beach House, we have stuff invested in the global equity markets and all that.
Mhm.
That's fine. That's the right. It's a different.
Mhm.
But when you got liquidity reserves, you don't want that NAV value going all over the place.
Right.
You want to be able to access that money when you need it,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you want to know when it's there. And I will tell you, and Kim will back this up. Every time the market went up or down, Kim and Austin would say, "Geez, we're losing money. We're gaining money. We're losing money." No, we got it.
Mhm.
That's what happens when you're in
Mhm.
variable NAV product like equity markets and
Mhm.
bond markets.
Mhm.
And worse yet, we were losing money in good times.
Yeah.
Oh, now that's bad.
And by the way, I want to say one other thing, and this is a technical. Because you're in governments doesn't mean you're safe. So, for example, and I mean this in a way that you're not thinking probably about it, but if you're in a 30-year government bond and interest rates go up, you're going to lose value. You're still in a government bond fund, and you will still get the money back you were promised, but the price of that security goes down.
Yeah.
The only way you can guarantee that is to be in very, very short-term government discount bills. And that's what a money market does, treasury bills.
Treasury.
And so you put the money in, there's hardly any what we would call interest rate risk.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone says I'm not, this isn't,
Mhm.
just when they come back and say you're in governments, don't worry, that's not enough. You still have interest rate risk.
I agree.
Now, you shouldn't have credit risk. That's, I think, where Bob's laughing. That's a whole nother possibility. If we and someday have a credit risk with the government, in other words, they say we're not going to pay, but we do have interest rate risk if you're in longer dated instruments.
So do we know what our maturities are now?
Don't know anything. I know zero. I just know we have $5 million at Fulton.
We used to have a money market with,
Well,
I don't know if
okay.
you're or not.
No.
So
Do you or you don't?
We used to.
for our 13th meeting, let's at least
Oh, the 13th. Okay. Like that, like the numbers.
At least
Yeah.
discuss
You keeping
and
track?
suggest that we keep the liquid reserve to $1 million and move all of us to money market, government, whatever.
We don't have to have them. Well, okay, it's just me.
I mean, doesn't that, I'm asking if
I
that
don't have
needs to
to have
be
a
on the agenda,
decision.
but, you know,
I would have to actually come up with the number that we need in operations.
Well, that's the key.
That's the only.
That's the key.
That's
Of
the only thing.
5
It seems
million,
like
how much
everyone's
do you
agreeing.
need? How much do you
Yeah.
need to put the 5 million?
And
You know?
Kim's got to come back and say, this is the money market I recommend. So
Exactly.
you got the money, the size of the cash balance in the bank and the money market that you recommend.
okay, and maybe we say Robin, Kim, Sharon can take more out of a money market to pay. You know,
Well, you just have to tell us what that number should be.
And there's a couple small technicalities. For example, Kim can open up let's just say it's a Vanguard money market fund. Kim
Mhm.
can open up one account and put the electric utilities bank account in there. She could put the wastewater. They can all go in that one
Yeah.
account.
Mhm.
And then Kim will have to, through accounting, break them up. Or she can go to Vanguard perhaps and open up 4 separate accounts. And one of them will be for electric, one of them will be for wastewater, and she'll let Vanguard do the accounting basically. And so Kim can go up and say, I can just look every day about our balances across the
better idea. But right now, Robin could invest in crypto if he wanted.
Good.
And he is, I think. Just
Just
doesn't know it.
No, I mean, I think that's our policy. Robin can invest the
Yeah.
money.
Well, the investment policy statement is written very wide. And so this whole thing, when we get to the UBS side of it with reserves, causes a complete rewrite
It's
of the
very
investment
different.
policy statement, and it becomes very simple. There's not all these big guardrails and ranges and what ifs.
No,
and-
it's not complex. It's just a matter of doing
It's
it.
very simple.
We should do it.
It's money preservation.
Also, by getting out of that, you're just saving money by getting away from
The
the
fees.
unnecessary expense.
So we'll add that to the 13th.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim. That was good.
Okay.
Anything further?
You don't have any vacation plan, do you?
Boy, am I going to in April though.
I'll tell you something I've learned about Kim. She has a plan
Uh-oh.
to jump out of an airplane before she's born.
Yeah. I have a desire. I don't have a plan yet.
Is the plane in the?
I have
air
a
or-
desire not.
I used to make before.
Yeah, no, I have a bigger desire not.
I said something to her like, wear your seatbelts, you're really important. And she said, well,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Oh, come on, man, really. Okay.
Maybe you do hang glider first.
Go into the booth where you're just on top of the air to
Yeah,
the
that,
simulator. Yeah.
Yeah, do the real thing, stay down here.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I make a motion, yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi,
Hi.
Aye.
thank you, everybody.